As I was traveling like into the space of eternity, I was so pissed. I'm probably the only spirit to make it to heaven and actually be mad. I was like, what? I'm wrong? Because, in my life, I was a devout atheist.
Hi, Betty. Thanks for joining me. I heard you had a near-death experience or a near-death type experience. Could you share it with us, please?
Yes, I can. Thanks so much for having me. I'm totally stoked to be here. I grew up in a really chaotic, dysfunctional home. Every sort of trauma that you could imagine happened in my household. And so I turned to using illicit substances at a very young age to deal with all of the discomfort in my life. And my whole family is sort of like this perpetual cycle of addiction and poverty and trauma. I experienced a really traumatic loss in my life at a very young age. My parents, who were both very immersed in their addiction, made a decision to end their lives together. And I was 23 when that happened. My sister was 18. We found them. It was, there's just no words for what something like that is like. But in that moment, my addiction became my parent. And I decided that I would no longer be a victim to my circumstance. Now I would be the perpetrator in people's lives. And so that's what I did. I lived my life causing lots and lots of harm. And it progressed over the course of my life. I ended up having this near-death-like experience. I overdosed and I was taken to the space of eternity in a non-physical realm, in blinding white light, enveloped in unconditional love, the same space that near-death experiencers describe. And I was guided into this space by loved ones I had crossed over. I had a boyfriend who had recently passed away. He was there to greet me. My father greeted me. And as I was traveling into the space of eternity, I was so pissed. I'm probably the only spirit to make it to heaven and actually be mad. I was like, what? I'm wrong? Because, in my life, I was a devout atheist. There had been so much dense energy that had happened to me in my life. There was no way that I was going to believe in a creator that would allow all those things to happen to me. And so I just stayed hidden from God, source, the universe, because it was just easier. And so when I made my way into this space, I was told that I was a divine spiritual warrior, that I had chosen to come to earth and to live this life, and that I had chosen all of the adversity that I had experienced. The first part of my life was like boot camp, and the second part of my life would be carrying out the mission, and that I had to come back to earth to do that. And I was like, oh, I'm not going back. Like being in that space of eternity was the first time that I ever felt whole. My whole life, all of these experiences had happened to me that just kept fracturing me into these little shards of glass. Like every piece of me was so broken. And when I entered the space of eternity, it was like this amazing glue that just made me into this beautiful mosaic. And I was finally whole and complete. And there was no way that I was returning. And I said, I'm going to grab my pajamas and a bowl of popcorn. I'll watch the show from up here. No way. You cannot make me go back. I will not go back. And they said, okay, let us take you through the details of your pre-birth plan. It'll probably help you get through the rest of your life because you're going back. So they took me, it looked a lot like a video game in my mind's eye, which could have a lot to do with the generation that I was born in. So this man presented himself to me. He was wearing a plaid blazer and a fedora. And we were inside of a grocery store and we had an empty grocery cart and he said, pick your life. On the walls of the grocery aisles, it looked like there were these cereal boxes and every cereal box had a life experience on it. And I just remember like being this little orb of light and I was like, well, if I'm going to earth, I'm going to earth. And I just start grabbing every cereal box I can get my figurative hands on. There's no body there, and I just start throwing everything into the cart and, like just the densest experiences. And so many of them, my soul was like this, this script writer who has like no limits, like, okay, we're going to experience all of these different things. And then there were also things in the cart that I hadn't gotten to in my life yet, like recovery and overcoming and being a teacher and spiritual awakening and just all of these things that seemed really positive and beautiful. And so after they showed me the scene, it was as if 2 tons of bondage had been released from my body. I was no longer a victim to my circumstance. I was actually a divine co-creator of my experience. Things had no longer happened to me. They had happened for me because on some soul level, I had chosen it for the evolvement of myself. I understood what was going on and I thanked them for showing me like the very intricate part of my, pre-life plan and still absolutely refused to go back. And they said, listen, you have not balanced your life yet. You signed up for a mission and you have to complete it. So you don't have to go back into her, but you do have to go back. And so we'll show you the baby that you'll be born into if you choose not to go back into this life. And so they showed me this beautiful baby. They showed me everything about her, where she would be born, her ethnicity, her parents, her adversity, what her purpose would be, her mission, all of the things that she'd have to go through in her life to get there. And because I hadn't balanced my own life yet, this baby was going to experience many of the things that I had already experienced. And I thought, oh man, there's no way that I can start from zero. If these are my only options, I guess I'll go back into her. And it wasn't like a punishment. It wasn't like, we're making you go back. It was like, listen, you signed up for something. You have to complete it. And so these are your options for completion. There's no way to not complete what you signed up for. I kind of likened it to like being on a roller coaster. You can't hop off the ride halfway through. You got to just complete the ride. So I found my awareness sifting back into my body. And I remember very distinctly them saying like, trust us. The second part of your life will not be nearly as challenging as the first. And I just said, I do not trust you. And I sifted back into my awareness. And, I just wrote my experience off as drug-induced psychosis. All that I knew was that I took a bunch of drugs and then I thought I was talking to God, and I just thought like, whoa, that was nuts. Like, I'll never be that messed up again. And that's it, And then the universe, source, my angels, guides, my higher power stepped in this very loud, tangible way to let me know that my experience was a true one and that I had to get onto a different path and begin to complete my soul's mission. So all of these divine synchronicities started to take place in my life. Like all of my dealers that I had been dealing with for over a decade, all simultaneously decided to change their lives and stop selling. And I was like, this is crazy. Like I'd call up one guy, he'd be like, listen, I found Jesus. I want to be a good dad. Like I'm out of the game. And I'm like, okay, bye, click, call up the next guy, same story, but they did not know each other. It was bizarre. So now I had no way to get what I needed. And, I had a physical dependency to certain substances. And so I found myself on day 3 of withdrawal, and I was so sick, and I was welcoming death. It felt like my bones were on fire, like my skin was made of broken glass. I was sweating, chills, sick, all over myself. And I had this thought, and I said, man, I couldn't eat myself if I wanted to, because I'm so sick right now that I can't even get out of this bed to figure out a way to do that. And right then I heard a voice, and it told me that I could request what I wanted fixed. And I was like in the throes of desperation. So I was like, okay, strange voice, I want to no longer be physically dependent on this substance. And so they told me to lay back, count backwards from 10.